Okay, so I am gonna be taking some parts over to the machine shop. I know William wants to do the cylinder head over at the machine shop, so I'm gonna take care of that. And I'm gonna bring the case too. I think I'm just gonna get a second opinion from the shop to see if they would recommend us replacing the bearings inside. Okay, so these cylinder heads for sure need to get some work done. This one is for 1 and 2, so 3 and 4 is really bad with the exhaust valve completely cracked. At this point, we might as well just get both of these done, so I'm gonna take these. And then I'm also gonna take the block. Let me actually show you why I think we may possibly need to replace the bearings because of the amount of end play there is right now. See, it moves quite a bit and it should really only be very, very minimal. The bearings on the connecting rods seem okay to me. I mean, they could be better, but I don't know. Dropped off the cylinder heads and the price doesn't seem too bad. And he said it should be ready around the end of the week, so I will just wait for his call and then I'll come back and pick that up. Whoa, watch out. So this is actually pretty cool. So this is kind of like a bright copper. And if you can imagine something kind of like a steampunk look, we're gonna be doing this to every single tube. So William has been hard at work sanding all these chrome pieces out because we're gonna be painting them with the high heat. It says here, gas and oil resistant, so hopefully that's gonna be okay. But the chrome pieces are nice and scuffed up, so hopefully the paint will stick a little bit better. These ones here are looking good so far. Not too bad.
One eternity later.
Okay, time to build William's engine. We finally got his block back from the machine shop. Pretty much everything on the inside's done, all the bearings, and we have the pistons and cylinders. Okay, before the pistons and cylinders, we actually have to install the head studs. These are from my old set and these are Williams, and these are in much better condition. So we looked at the worst one of mine. I think this one here, I think it was stripped at one point, so we looked at one of the best ones he had and combined it with this set. So I think this should be okay.
Volkswagen are pretty cheap, huh?
Relatively, yeah. Okay, the block has all of the studs. We're moving over to the pistons and cylinders, and I've shown William how to remove the pistons from the cylinder in order to realign all of these piston rings and compression ring, because you want these gaps all on the tops. So we're making sure those are correct, and also there's arrows on these pistons that need to point towards the flywheel that way. We are now done putting the pistons back into the cylinders, and what we're doing now is putting the paper gaskets along with the Permatex there. What we did is we masked off the piston here. We put a layer of Permatex so it doesn't paint Permatex onto here, and then we put the paper gasket and then more Permatex on top of it, and after that's done we just take it off, and that leaves the Permatex gasket sandwich there. So we've done the cylinder, this one's on its way out, and William's working on those two. All the gaskets are done. Now we are working on putting the C-clips into where the wrist pin goes there. Pistons and cylinders are ready to go onto the block. So we've put on cylinder 2, now we're working on cylinder 1, but we're not putting this in all the way yet because we need to put these cooling tins down at the bottom, which needs to clear this nut there. So these are gonna go down together at the same time, making sure that clip goes right in there holding the wrist pin. That looks like it went in actually.
Yeah,
pretty good. Let's go all the way around. Cylinder 1 and 2 are now installed. Working on cylinder 3 and 4 coming soon. Oh, you have a knife. Okay, so we got these cylinder heads back from the machine shop too. They replaced all the exhaust valves and all of the valve guides on the inside, and then bead blasted the entire thing, so they look really nice and clean. This one definitely needed to get replaced because that's cracked. and everything here is nicely bead blasted. Can you flip that over?
Yeah.
So they did that. They did the what is that, the lash or whatever. Yeah, and then they re-machined all this so it's nice and square when they install that onto the cylinders. These cylinders are interchangeable between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. What we noticed here is out of all 4 of the spark plug holes, this one here looks like it has a threaded insert installed right there. So I'm assuming at one point this was cylinder 3 and then this got damaged, so they repaired that. So what we're gonna do on this build is put this on cylinder 1 and 2 and then put this one on cylinder 3 and 4. That way this has a fresh hole there for the spark plugs. Cylinder 1 and 2 head is now installed. We're just hand tightening it down because we are gonna be following the torque sequence that's written here in the Bentley manual. So it says here the first sequence is at 7 foot-pounds in that order, and then after it's either 22 to 23. We'll just go for 23 in this order there. So this is the first torque sequence at 7 foot-pounds. I think that was it. There you go. Now on to the second torque sequence of 23 foot-pounds. So cylinder 1 and 2 cylinder head is done, and we are gonna wait to install the pushrod tubes until we have cylinder 3 and 4 set up, because we have those adjustable ones. Now we're torquing down cylinder 3 and 4. This is the first torque sequence of 7 foot-pounds. Okay guys, so we experienced a bit of a hiccup. Well, not really a hiccup, a blocker, because, well, a couple things. We think this stud here is actually stripped. We marked it here blue to see if this head stud is spinning. It's not. This nut we double checked and this nut is okay, but what I think is the thread on this stud down there might be bad because this nut just keeps spinning. So right now we do have to take just the cylinder head off. These pistons and cylinders can stay so that we can replace that one. And also, I guess it's good that we're having to replace cylinder 3 and 4 because we do need to drill into this section here in order to install the cylinder head temperature. And I don't have my Dremel. I'm gonna get that tomorrow, so I guess it kind of works out. And we will have to just complete this tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day and I've picked up the Dremel tool, and William actually ended up bringing a Dremel that's way better than mine. We have the cylinder head taken apart because now we have the cylinder head temperature sensor, and this is the one that goes into the spark plug hole and then into cylinder 3, which is the hottest cylinder. I do need to do some grinding in order for this red piece to fit, and then we can install the spark plug to hold that down in place. I worked on modifying this gauge or sensor, a little bit in order for it to fit a little bit better in the cylinder head. I bent this shaft as close to this socket as possible. That way in the future when we need to take out the spark plug, we still can. And then also this edge here, I kind of ground that out so that it's a little bit smoother. The drilling is done. I have the spark plug installed here with that sensor. And you can see these fins are nicely grinded, so it's out of the way. You can still put the socket here to put on the spark plug and remove it. Pretty good. Okay, so we have the cylinder head back in place, and we've been kind of at this for a little bit now, and we keep thinking that this stud here for cylinder 3 on the bottom side, we kept thinking that it was bad, so we replaced it like 3 different times with different rods, and what we find out is this right here. Every single time we torque down this nut, it pulls the entire stud up because the threads on this insert here has actually gone bad. I think we have to take this back over to the machine shop, and they may need to drill that out and give us new threads in order for a new insert to go in.
With a helicoil.
Maybe a helicoil or something, I don't know. So we're gonna take this to the machine shop as is, just like this, just so they can see what that looks like. And depending what they say, if they want us to disassemble it like this, or if they're gonna do it, but that definitely needs to get fixed before we can go forward. Here we are back at the machine shop. So we're gonna talk to them and see what we can do. Yeah, it's right there. And it's pulling out, it's not even spinning. So I think the hole in the actual block itself may be bad. Okay, I guess we got some good news. All we need to do is just take off one side, and they're just going to use some oversized insert down there, and then we'll still be able to use these 8mm studs. So we'll just do this right outside of the shop real quick, and then bring it right back inside. Okay, the cylinders and the head is out. We can't get the pistons out because we forgot the tool to get these out. All right, it's the next day, and we finally picked this up from the machine shop, and they've gone ahead and fixed that insert there. So we are ready to start building. Okay, we're back home with the engine. So we have the cylinders going back into the pistons there. It's actually a lot better to take the pistons out. That way you can, again, readjust the level of where these gaps are. So that's why he took that off to install into here and then putting it onto the block. All right, we're putting the C-clips back into the pistons, and just make sure there's this paper towel here so that if it flies off, it doesn't go into the block. And it's actually already happened once, so that's already saved us another trip and a lot more expenses. Okay, sometimes Harbor Freight tools really suck, so we are using these. Oh, you got it.
Oh, got it?
Yeah, show me the pliers. Yeah, we just use these angled ones with a really sharp tip so you can put it into the holes of that C-clip, and it looks like it's in there. Last cylinder 3 is going back on, so let's hammer that in. The rest of it is going to get torqued down when we put the cylinder head studs in. Okay, we got a little system going. So again, we put glue here and then glue there and here. I'm just holding this so it keeps it nice and tight. Then I'm going to drop this in just like that and line it up with the hole here. So this has the glue, this has the glue here as well, and in there. We've already finished this whole side. Now we just have 2 more. Before we actually put the push rods, I want to start working on the valve rockers. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove these adjustment screws because we actually have new replacement ones here. And you can see it's supposed to have like that ridge there compared to these ones that are now completely flat. So all of those are coming off. We're going to keep these retaining nuts here. Also, there's these 4 gaskets or O-rings, and one goes here and one goes there. I have a little bit of oil here, so we're just going to lube that up a little bit and then shove these in. Those are going to go into the push rod tubes without the rockers here. And then once the push rods are in there, these are going to go back in. Once that's torqued down, then we're going to put the adjustment screws back in place. All right, so problem after problem. So we got these push rod tubes installed here. We put the push rods, and then when we went to install these rockers, things started to break. First one here, cylinder 3, it completely cracked here in the back. We stopped torquing it down. We kind of just put this here so that the push rods don't come out. So then we started moving on to cylinder 1 and 2, and then of course the same thing happens. The piece broke off of this one here as well. So that's right here in the back of that. Came right off. And in doing so, this stud here also stripped out. We are gonna have to stop right now. We can't really do much. This head is gonna need to come off so we can replace this stud. And then once that gets replaced, then we will throw this back on. William has a spare engine at home that should have a good set of these rockers. All right, it is the next day. It's, as you can tell, it's nighttime already. We've just been kind of busy, but what our plan was to extract this stud and replace it with this one. But instead, what we noticed is that it was stripped right here at the very tip. Everything down here was still okay. We basically figured that as long as it gets past that spot where it was stripped, it should still torque down. So what we did is we got a chaser, a thread chaser, and we cleaned up the threads, and sure enough, it was able to torque down. So good thing we didn't have to replace that, because that would have been a nightmare. We finally got this torque down as well as the other side. Now that we have the valves and the rocker arms, everything is all installed here. We installed this bottom tin because that's the only time you can install it before putting on this pulley. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna look for where top dead center is. So this makes it a whole lot easier because it says here TDC, and we're gonna line that up to this line. But you don't want to only use that as an indication that you're on TDC, because that could also mean that you're on top dead center of cylinder 3, where you want to be top dead center of cylinder 1. So to find that out, you basically just push these in just enough so that it's touching the valves. And watch when I kind of wiggle the flywheel to kind of go left and right here. You'll see these ones move instead. See that? So that basically indicates that you are top dead center cylinder 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this completely 360 degrees. Just like that. So top dead center here. Line it up to this line. And now we're going to look again. And these should not move. This should not move. And then for cylinder 2, only exhaust will be moving. So that is a clear indication we're on TDC for cylinder 1. From here, we can either do valve lash now or deal with that later. But what I really want to do is install this here, which is the distributor valve, or what's it called? The distributor drive gear.
Yeah.
And that will align the distributor once it's all installed. All right, so the distributor drive gear is now installed. Based on the video I took when we disassembled this, I remember that this line right here was kind of pointing in that direction when it was on top dead center. And like what I was explaining to William, the type 1 setup is different from type 3, which is indicated here. That points that way, but apparently for type 1s, they go this way. And that's because the difference in the engines between type 1 and type 3. Type 3 has the fan shroud here, so if you're running the vacuum advance on the distributor, it would be in the way of the fan shroud. So to remedy that, type 3s, they have it clocked a whole 180 degrees the other way. So this is going to be the type 1, and type 3 is different. Distributor is now installed. We have that clamp down here. Next up is going to be the oil cooler. So there's like a manifold thingy that goes like that, and then the tall oil breather or oil cooler here. So we're going to grab all the gaskets that came with the gasket set, and we're going to throw those in and bolt it in. You have to remember the oil cooler needs to be connected to this manifold thingy here, because if you install this thing here first before putting on the oil cooler, this actually gets in the way, so it's impossible to put on and take off. Now, to put that on, there's 2 gaskets that sit right here in the middle, just like those 2, and then you torque down all of those. Well, there's only 3, and then this bracket here that holds the doghouse shroud thingy. Those, I also oiled them up, and then there's 2 bolts or studs here that go down, and then they just torque down with regular, 8 mils. So I'm gonna put some Loctite on that first, and then we'll thread it in. I was wrong, there's actually a 3rd nut there, and then these 2 down here. Okay, we're getting to a point where I think all we need to do now is start putting the cooling tins on. So we're gonna put the tops on both sides, then the bottoms, and then everything we need to put on. Here we go. We finally have the cooling tins down here at the bottom. It's all torqued down. We also have it on the top. Engine is currently upside down. Can you flip that over? You can see all the blue push rod tubes there that are springed. And there is the reveal of the top with the cooling tins installed also. Those are all torqued down as well. This engine build is now going a lot smoother and a lot faster. So we finally have all the cooling tins, like I mentioned last time. The muffler is now installed. We have the manifold installed, this thing here in the middle. Now we just have to bolt these down. And then after that, I think we're gonna start with the heat exchangers, which bolts in that way to here and here. So we should be all right to install that shortly.
Oh, I think it's deep. Oh no.
Yeah, it's just painted.
All right.
There you go. Put that bad boy in there. Cool.
It looks tighter like that.
So yeah, we have this intake manifold all torqued down. It's kind of crazy how this is all bolted in. It's like a weird sequence of events because you don't want these to shear off because it just has constant pressure going that way. So you have to make sure it's like, I don't know, William knows
Yeah,
the
a
process.
little
I
bit.
don't. So he did all that top section there. It's all nice and clean. We are gonna start to flip this over because the next thing we're gonna do is install the heat exchangers.
It's getting heavier now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. It should still be pretty well balanced though.
Right here.
Cool. All right, we'll grab the heat exchangers and bolt those in. Again, it's just the two down here and then it loops around, and then you have to make sure it goes in this hole, and then there's those tabs that bolt into here. Same thing on the other side. We may actually need to remove this, William, I think, because the heat exchanger probably goes there and there. Heat exchangers are buttoning up. We're gonna flip it back over and then start working on the rest of the shrouding. Okay, we were gonna start putting the fan shroud, and then we realized we need to put the alternator on that. But even before that, we actually need to put on this mount. Whoa, let me zoom out. We actually have to put on this mount thingy right there. And here there's gonna be like a series of gaskets. So we're gonna get this going, and then we'll be able to assemble all of that and put that over the engine. It's the next day, and we finally put on a couple other things. Like this one I've actually put on last night, but I just put this one on. I think we're gonna keep this one silver just because this part wasn't painted either, so whatever. And then we put on the fuel pump as well. Eventually William wants to switch over to an electronic one, but for now I think while we are trying to bench start the engine, we may as well just use the one that we have now, and then we'll deal with that later on. I put the cap on here. Now William is painting the clamp that goes around the alternator here, and once that dries up, then we're gonna go ahead and put on the actual fan shroud that holds the alternator. A lot of work has been done. We finally got this fan shroud back in with the alternator. It did kind of give us a fight with the fitment on here because both this and this are aftermarket, so of course they're not gonna fit properly. But there's that screw or bolt right there. This one, as well as this clamp that you kind of have to do like a balancing act and make sure everything's all basically straight there. So everything's good. We have the fuel pump, we have the carburetor put in. We just have to get like these cover things here that William's already got, and then looks like we haven't torqued that one down yet. And then we'll put the coil pack, and then we'll start putting on the rest of the wiring for the spark plugs. We have all the spark plug cables all hooked up, cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the proper order. The electronic ignition, we had to resplice into that because some of the terminals were kind of weird, so we'll plug that into here. This is now installed. Because we had it on top dead center, I've already set valve lash on cylinder 1, so I'm setting this at 6/1000ths of an inch, which is 0.006. Valve lash is now done. We did it on cylinder 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Everything should be pretty much set, so we took it off the engine stand, and then we're gonna fill it with oil and then bolt up the transmission and the starter and see if we can get it to start. Everything should be pretty much hooked up. We've already put oil inside. We have the fuel there. I know we're using this clear one, but I mean, it's just temporary. It's just so we can see that this is priming up with fuel. And then I have the battery plugged up here. So the positive side goes to the positive side on the starter, and the negative one just goes to the ground. I have this hot wire here that's supposed to go to the coil pack positive once I'm ready to actually start the engine, but for now I'm just gonna crank it just to get some fuel pressure and oil pressure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we actually already started it, and it started for like 10 seconds and then it died. I think it's because the timing's way off. So we're gonna start to get this to crank, and then I'm gonna pull the carburetor. William's gonna do the button and I'll do the distributor. So go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Isn't it too tight?
No, it's loose enough. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
it rotates. But go
Right
ahead.
then, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I was gonna do the compression testing off the video, but I think I might as well just do it before I close off this engine build, because what good is an engine build video if I can't even prove that it was done right? So I have the battery hooked up to the starter and grounded down to the transmission. I have this hooked up and also the compression tester to cylinder 1. That looks like a pretty solid 130. Cylinder 2. Also exactly at 130. Cylinder 3. Closer to about 145. And then last but not least, cylinder 4. Also right at about 130. So we have cylinder 1 is 130, 2 is 130, 3 is 145, and 4 is 130. That's not too bad. That's not bad at all. I mean, I do expect it to level out maybe after about 1,000 miles.
It's been so long.
Ready to start.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like you have spark.
Yep.
Forgot to hook up the coil pack. That's why it didn't sound like it was having spark.
Mm-hmm.
Coil positive.
Yeah.
And then that's just the choke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just leave that on the side. All right. It should have fuel primed since you kind of cranked it a bit, so hopefully it should start right up right now. There we go.